it might not be you, but it's somebody that you know who knows somebody else, your sister, auntie, uncle, cousin. Yeah. Somebody has been affected some way, shape, or form.
Still ignorance in our community, still ignorance in our home.
Like their stigma actually hurts like people. Like, you know, just having that mindset really does hurt people.
It is dehumanizing, period. Creating like this farce that you're immune to STIs and HIV, which is definitely not the case.
When we remove access, we increase the risk. Not everyone contracts HIV outside the body, right? And so some people are born with HIV. And so we just can't look at someone and say, this person is living with HIV or not.
I feel like sometimes people just do not want to have conversations because it's taboo or whatnot. But like, we need to be very vocal about those things.
Welcome to Keep On Loving the podcast. I am your favorite host, Rose, Mystkue Woods, and I'm so happy to have these wonderful individuals here. So I'm going to start all the way down on my right side with Diamond.
Hello, I'm Diamond, she, they pronouns. I am a lead coordinator of Galay QT BIPOC. And also on the side, I am a nightlife performer and also the current rating Philadelphia Leather 2020 to 2025.
Woo!
So
awesome. Yes. All right. Then we have Rosko.
Hello again, y'all. If y'all guys don't remember me from the last podcast, my name is Rosko. That's Rsko. My pronouns don't matter. I use he, she, or they pronouns. I am the Addicts Fresh coordinator, and I am a young advocate for people living with HIV.
And last but certainly not least, we have Naiymah.
Hi, y'all. Naiymah Sanchez, she, her pronouns. I'm the senior organizer with the ACLU of Pennsylvania, but a start movement advocating here in Pennsylvania.
Yes. So as you can see, I always somehow, with the help of my awesome colleague, shout out to Harlan, who is in the building, but you know, they're doing our other stuff for us. Who has these amazing individuals who have been working here with us in Philadelphia in the community and also have spread their wings. So shout out to y'all. I'm excited.
Thank you.
So why are we here today? What are we talking about today, y'all? Do y'all know what today?
Oh, HIV stigma?
Yes. Are we going to skip the icebreaker?
Know what to... Okay, anyway, so today we are talking about Zero HIV Stigma Day. And so let's open it up with that. So what does Zero HIV Stigma mean for all of you as individuals?
I could start. Okay, so like Zero HIV Stigma to me means that there is education and information to people about HIV, so people are not willfully ignorant. Mm-hmm. I feel like people are still in a time where they do not have the necessary information, or they are just not being intuitive about, you know, learning more about how we can, you know, protect ourselves and also keep ourselves safe and healthy, you know, when it comes to these things. So I think being able to break down stigma of HIV and making sure that we are, you know, providing, you know, accurate resources in a way that we are educating each other so that we can, you know, protect each other and keep each other safe.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think, again, like, educating is like the most important thing because a lot of times stigma comes from lack of education and just not being educated about how HIV works is why we have like so much stigma within this world. And HIV's been around for a long time now. And you would think with all the resources and educational sort resources out there that people will actually want to learn, but they don't. So this day is very important to not only create a safe space for people who live with HIV, but to also educate the people who aren't living with HIV and some who do have stigma against themselves, and just creating that safe space for them to let them know that, yeah, you need to know more about your status or about HIV as a whole, rather than just assuming that we're back in the, you know, the old times when it was very like much a death sentence. And knowing the difference between HIV and AIDS is the biggest thing I think about Zero Stigma Day, because that's like the key thing I think people see. They always like confuse it too, especially on social media. So that is like the highlight, like knowing the difference between AIDS and HIV.
Yeah.
I mean, my hope is that's side up. You know, that
I said what they said. That
yeah, for sure. I mean, the education piece is definitely important. Mm-hmm. Whether we are trying to spread awareness on how HIV is transmitted in our communities, but also how funding is coming into our communities, right? So I think that the one thing is that our society has been misinformed about HIV, right? And so whether it is preventative care or treatment, I think that we should continue to have these conversations, because HIV stigma, or zero HIV stigma, it's not just about being a person living with HIV, but also about educating the community on how it's spreaded, and also how the resources is trickled down into our communities to help eradicate.
Awesome. Absolutely. And so with that being said, my next question to you all is really around the work that you all are doing in Philadelphia as well as Pennsylvania. And where do you feel like the stigma shows up in your everyday interactions as well, whether that is from a communal side or even a political side? Because let's be real, everything has politics in it.
Yes.
I think for me, my biggest challenge is, with being, in the intersex of being Black and also trans, talking to my Black, cis people that are, willfully ignorant that like they don't need to get tested or whatnot, when we see statistics that show that there is a high, transmission rate when it comes to Black women getting HIV right now. So what I do is like I make sure that I'm talking to people and being very blunt about like statistics, not to scare people, but to be like hey, like you have to take care of yourself. If you take care of yourself, you're also taking care of other people that are around you, because it's not just about yourself. It's about the people that you are, having relationships with. And we want to make sure that we're, keeping each other safe and being, the healthiest that we can be. And that means being honest about conversations that we have. And I feel like people do not want to have honest conversations, or they want to kind of like neglect it, or they say it's, oh, that's that gay, stuff or whatnot. When in reality, HIV does not have, a gender or a sexuality when it comes to, who it transmits to. So you have to be very honest and very vocal about those things. And that's one of the things that I'm struggling with right now, is like talking to like cis people about, transmission, because a lot of people don't want to, be in the know about those things. And also HIV, like prevention, like PrEP and stuff like that, like feeling like people don't need that stuff. I'm like, that's for you. You can utilize that stuff because it helps you keep you healthy. It helps you keep your community healthy. And, it helps us keep each other, accountable for our safety, how we treat each other in the community and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I think for me, it's a lot of what Diamond said, but also because I'm very social media heavy within like the Philadelphia community, it's going on social media and seeing a lot of ignorance towards HIV and just the stigma within that. For a lot of people in the community that's like from Philadelphia too, whether they're like queer or not queer, and it's really disheartening to like try to touch those people, because I know for me in my work, I always want to like, be able to touch people in a way of understanding, like, what people with HIV, living with HIV go through. And not only that, but just understanding themselves more, how like their stigma actually hurts like people. Like, just having that mindset really does hurt people. And you just would never know who you're around that has HIV, and you're saying things, or you're doing stuff that's just blatant out of ignorance instead of just actually wanting to educate yourself. But honestly, I certainly think that it's made to be like for fun. Like people just like randomly posting like just like, oh, I don't have this and third. And if you do, like, I remember I seen a post, somebody saying like about, if somebody cooks something that, it was HIV positive, oh, just don't cook nothing for me. Like, like, cause they're thinking that's how it's supposed to be spread. And this is somebody that's in Philadelphia too. So it's like, I literally seen that on Facebook, and I like, I'm friend, like so quickly. I didn't even have the time to like go back and forth. And I usually do. I'm one of those keyboard warriors where like, if I can't, I am. No, I am.
If you have the time,
If I have the time, get the time. That's exactly. And I'm not above it. And honestly, like I did a lot during the pandemic, but like I will say my more recent years, like being out in the field, like, I don't have time like to really go back and forth with people online about the importance of like just educating yourself on HIV. But it does like, it's like a big barrier and make it hard for when you are somebody that's like known in the community and you see other people like on social media who like are being ignorant towards people who have HIV.
Or make it a butt of a joke.
Yeah, it's like it's honestly a butt of a joke.
Butt of a joke. And like, I just feel like that is just like terrible.
It gets so played out too. Like I feel like every other day I see like a post about something HIV related, and it's just like, don't you have anything else to talk about? Like, especially if it's not nothing good. Like y'all have nothing else good to talk about HIV, but y'all so good about saying, "Oh, I got this," or "This person gonna give this to me," and not really knowing like how that really works. And then again, going back to what I said for the last question, just the differentiation between AIDS and HIV. Like some people think that they're the same thing, and not knowing like the difference between them.
Understood. Yeah.
I mean, again,
Yes, and all the things.
and to piggyback, you know, unlike politicians, right? HIV don't discriminate. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yes, exactly.
One more again.
unlike our politicians, HIV does not discriminate
At all.
And so, as we see, like a lot of legislative efforts, I mean, we have some federal things that are happening and some local things in our state that is happening that ultimately put people at a higher risk, community members at a higher risk. And again, HIV/AIDS is not a TLGBTQ plus issue, right? It's a community issue, society, you know, concern, right? And so when we think about the rollbacks in funding in schools, when we think about the rollbacks in funding in reproductive care, HRT, I'm just going to give my experience right here, right? Because it's very important. I'm 41 years old, and I grew up in a time when I blossomed into my transness. We didn't have access to affirmative care and doctors, right? We had one provider here, and they were very siloed to who they provide care to, right? They very much was not taking care of the brown community. And so your wait time was really, really long. And so I resorted to purchasing my HRT, my medication from somebody's house, right? And so when we remove access, we increase the risk, right? And so again, no, it's not a LGBTQ issue. It's a community issue. And also the lack of knowledge, right? The respectability politics, but also the need to ridicule people or talk down about people or clown people who are living and trying to thrive with their diagnosis, or people who challenge or who experience challenges with just existing in a world that has labeled them as a person with HIV as like a death sentence, right? And so when we think about the stigma, we think about politics, when we think about even how our community, right, adds on to this, right? I think it's a deeper conversation that should be addressed, right? And
I agree.
Unlike our politicians, HIV does not discriminate. And so when you think that it may not impact you, it definitely will, right? It impacts every aspect of our lives, right?
Somewhere along the merry-go-round.
There it is.
Listen, we're coming around the mountain when she comes, and I'm telling you that it might not be you, but it's somebody that you know who knows somebody else, your sister, auntie, uncle, cousin. Somebody has been affected some way, shape, or form. So it's very important that we are educating ourselves, one, but two, you are just thinking about the things that you say. I think often when I was just watching BMF, and there was just this little short, blowing money. Listen, it don't even matter. It's a TV show. It's okay. And so basically, but it was talking about it's about two kingpins, and then they have a little sister. And so there's this interesting dialogue between the mom and the sister. So the sister just got a scholarship to this university, but she finds out that she's pregnant, and she doesn't tell her parents. But what she does do is she tells the father of her child, or the proposed father of her child. But the mom sees the guy like rub her stomach when they're at like a event or something like that, and she goes and she says to her, "Oh, like when were you going to tell us that you were pregnant?" And she was like, "So, and do you know who the father is? And also, like, now you need to go get tested for AIDS." And I thought that moment was so interesting, because I'm like, so we just went from her being pregnancy to her having AIDS, where her older brothers have been depicted to have multiple different women, multiple different children, and now this one individual who is 16, 17, young black cis woman, right, is being told by her mother, like, oh, you know, you're a Jezebel, right? So we're talking about those tropes and those stereotypes. So now all of a sudden you need to go get tested for AIDS. Now, granted, I will say that this is, you know, back and pictured back in like the 80s. So they didn't really have as much information as we know now. But even still, when we talk about media, I think that this would have been a great opportunity for them to put, just like how they do with anytime there's something triggering or like any type of trauma, like if you know somebody who is dealing with X, Y, and Z, there was nothing about that. And like if you know somebody who, you know, is struggling with or needs to figure out where to go get tested or stuff like that, wasn't there. And I think that when you have a sentence like that, and for me, I was like, AIDS though?
Right.
She just lost her virginity like a month ago. But not to say that it can't happen, but also...
Those things matter, and I think it goes back. I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, just with like the social media presence. Like, you know, when you watch something like that on TV, and then you take it social media to make like joke of it, that's not actually really doing people living with HIV a service, because then you're giving other people leverage to think that, oh, it's only AIDS, AIDS is this, and then people can make fun of this because they don't have it and they don't really know what it's about.
Exactly.
And it's also like very dehumanizing in a way. Well, it is dehumanizing, period.
Yeah.
You know, especially like going onto social media and doing that on a public forum, and then on top of it, like dealing with it on like stuff like dating apps, like going, like talking to people and being like, you know, having people ask you if you're clean, like the term clean, like people that have HIV are intuitively dirty, which is totally disgusting. You know, I hate when I always am correcting people, or I like, it disinterests me about that person, because I'm like, you don't have the correct terminology to use.
Language matters.
Language matters. I mean, even to that point, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So as we're calling people in and tell them how harmful or violent they're being to community members when they are using someone's HIV status to in a way to dehumanize, and even whether it's intentional or unintentional, right? I think it is our due diligence as people who are viewers to say, hey, this is not right. Even on social media, this is what the report feature is about. Like, I'm not a big fan of police, right? And I don't want to police anybody. However, I'm going to police when language is being used that is harmful to other communities, whether it's to me or whether it's to somebody that I love or people that I love. And so that is our job, right? And I think that's the call to action on this one question is like, what are we actually doing to dispel a lot of the myths, but also call in people who are being harmful, right? Or counterproductive to the movement of safety, right? And what safety looks like is very different for everyone, right? But the one thing that we all want to feel is safe.
Right.
So I'm not safe if I'm strolling on social media and I see something where someone is either outing a guy for dating a trans woman or outing someone because they seen them in a doctor's office that's known to treat people who are living with HIV, right? Those things are uncomfortable because just like Diamond said, if you do it to them, you'll do it to me, right? And so let me gently nudge you and say how violent this is, right? What it could do, right? It's not just about outing someone for their status, but there's still ignorance in our community, still ignorance in our home. And so in some homes where parents or grandparents are taking care of queer or very fluid young folks, they have this perception that you're automatically going to be positive, or that you're going to come down with some sort of communicable disease. And so they're forcing people to eat off of paper plates, or suggesting that you don't use the toilet, like, or, you know, like these are your utensils. And so that creates more stigma, which is more harmful, because then those young people are now running to the streets, going from pillar to post, couch surfing to find affirmation or safety in someone else. And so it leads us into this cycle of harm, right?
Yeah, and I think the word violence, I've really liked the fact that you used that, because it is a violent thing, and I don't think people people oftentimes say when they hear violence, they think about physical violence. But when we talk about violence, it encapsulates language, it encapsulates actions on how you treat people with discriminatory behaviors. That is also violence. So, being able to recognize that, terminologies and words can cause violent, things that can cause detrimental harm to somebody. You never know what a person's mental state is going to be. And like the last thing that they hear is something that could trigger them to a point where they feel like they don't have anybody or any agency to be here be here. And we don't want that. So being mindful of like, when we talk about violence, it's just not physical. It is also how you, talk up to people and how your language really affects people, your actions and how you treat people when it comes to, different experiences. And you have to do a lot of introspective work to combat that stuff. Because initially, like when people are, willfully ignorant, they're going to, not feel comfortable in wanting to, change. And at this point, we need people to be comfortable in changing behaviors, because it's only going to create a lot more problems and a lot more number statistics that we do not want to see. We're already seeing enough right now, and we want to prevent that happening.
Absolutely. So let's switch gears a little bit, because we talked a lot about the negative aspects of stigma and what that looks like. But here in Philadelphia, we have a lot of community grassroots organizations who are doing the work. I mean, when I say boots on the ground, the people got their boots on the ground.
Okay. Where's your fans?
Where the fans are. So let's shout out some of them, whether we're here at Galay, but also other places where, who are doing this work and maybe don't often get to, get their flowers in real time, not after something has happened or, certain people are in the room, all of those things. So anyone can start.
Okay. So obviously we're here at Galay. Hello. This is our space. Please come. We're open Monday through Friday from 10:30 to 6, depending on the day. For me, I could talk like for me personally, like I utilize a lot of the things that I know from my leather and kink history, in order to promote safer sex practices in those types of scenes. So one thing that I feel like is a big miss in leather and kink spaces is that there is not a lot of education on certain things, or there is lack of education on how like practicing safer sex practices and kink and stuff like that can prevent HIV and STI rates from skyrocketing. So like how to appropriately, utilize different sex toys, how to appropriately like play in different types of kink spaces that, are a little bit more taboo and whatnot, so that we're preventing, this the transmission rate, and also educating and providing resources at events that are sex positive is very, very important. All the events that I've done in the past always had a level of resources that had to do with STI, HIV prevention and also testing, because I felt that it was important for us to, have fun and be sexy and, do what you want to do, but also taking care of yourself and your community is also very important for us to continuously have these spaces. And if we're not doing the necessary work to be able to, have conversations, have testing, have like, or quick, HIV, take-home tests, we're only doing ourselves a disservice because we're not addressing the big picture. Yes, sex is fun, but like sex also comes with other things, and we need to address everything so that we are all well informed, so that we can protect ourselves and also, the people that we are interacting with. So, also I will say, the zoning center does a good job too. I go there.
Shout out to the zoning.
Yeah.
All right. What you got for me?
Oh, well, there are a lot of orgs. You got Babashi, you got Conchers, you got Zale. I mean, to
Encourage
think about
medicine.
that, I mean, we got Fight, you know, the
Really
AIDS
Fight.
Law Project. I mean, I think those are all great organizations, right? For sure. And even when we talk about the bigger picture of like HIV, AIDS, and like societies or our communities' well-being and health, right? I look at grassroots groups that don't get recognized, who don't receive a lot of the funding, that takes blunt force of all of the labor to minimize the impact that HIV has had in our communities, right? And so I look at like the Gran Vedrones
Yes.
project. We
Shout out to
hosted a campaign here at Gale a few years ago. It was called Positivo, and it was reclaiming the word positive, right? And how reclaiming positive in a way was actually empowering versus dehumanizing, right? I think of those groups. I also think about like the Philly Trans March that does great work. I think about the folks that provide services to individuals in need in Kensington, right? Like Prevention Point, but also trying to think of Courage.
Yeah.
I mean, the Wellness Project, like all of these things, all of these groups that are not 501c3 organizations, but doing amazing work to help in the harm that our community members are experiencing because they're in need and there's no resources. And I'm saying no resources, and the no resource I'm talking about is funds, right? I mean, where we just seen oh, look, my eye almost got stuck by rolling. I was rolling so hard. But we just seen like this tremendous cut through this big, beautiful bill that goes back on a lot of resources. Right? I think that that the federal administration just got forced to have their release like $1.6 billion, and don't quote me on the price, but I'm just saying, I mean, amount, but just had to get forced to reinstall HIV funding back to LGBT orgs, right? It was like these initiatives doesn't help. But when we think about like organizations, of course, we think about the mainstream ones, the ones that are large, who has a visible name, but we don't talk about Kaya Potrakenyo that provide other resources for community member as an outlet. If I have nothing to do, then I'm finding something to do. And my granny always used to say, idle mind is the devil's playground, right? And so when I was young, right, I had the Addict Youth Center. But before the Addict, I was influenced by the older trans women that I seen in community because it's the only thing I could relate to. And what they were told was that this was the only life for them was to be a sex worker because we wouldn't have no jobs because people would discriminate. Again, I'm 41, so this is at a time where they didn't have policies in our school like Policy 252. Big ups to the ED of this organization, who was one of the driving authors of that, Hazel Edward, right? And so the Philadelphia School District is another agency that's minimizing it because our young folks, you know, if they have policies, right, and practical format, right, they're more likely to stay engaged in education where they're not running to the streets. Without education, you can't get a job. Without a job, you can't provide housing, can't make informed decisions. And so then we see, again, this ripple effect. And so, yes, big ups, and I'm sorry, I didn't have many orders to give you no space. That did set up to the organization that we can name. But there are some groups out here that are doing amazing work. And what I implore each and every one of the folks that's viewing, who may view it today or view it in the future, is to learn about those grassroots groups in your community that's actually doing work, right? Even servicing food to people, right? If we're experiencing a food desert, people are going to go to extreme means to feed themselves. That means people are digging into trash cans, right? So we talk about we talk about HIV, but there are other opportunistic infections, diseases, and conditions that happen with people who are living with HIV, and also people who just have compromised immune systems in general. And so all of those groups. Grassroots first.
Period.
I'll be quiet.
You're welcome. No, agree. You all are doing an amazing job.
Hey, if you're enjoying this episode and you are a Philadelphia resident and you need resources about your sexual and reproductive health, visit www.phillykeeponloving.com.
I want to talk a little bit about the HIV prevention tools. So, we have PrEP, so we have Descovy, we have Truvada, we have Apertude, and coming down the market, we have lenacapavir, which are all great and amazing things. However, when we talk about specific Black and Brown communities, we still see this big gap, right? So there's a large gap there in terms of whether it is prevention tools or it even just routine testing. And so how do you feel that we can best remove stigma when it comes to routine testing? Because I feel like, as a single female in Philadelphia, when I'm speaking about just getting tested, it's like, well, you get tested every 2 months. I'm like, well, that's because I'm on PrEP. But if I wasn't on PrEP, I would still do the same thing.
Yeah.
But when I'm having those types of conversations, it's almost as if it's foreign, or it's like, well, it's the assumption that you're having so much sex that you need to get tested,
Yeah, it comes with a stigma.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts on, or how do we eradicate that and we move that back?
I feel like people need to be more honest about conversations about that. I feel like not being honest about what you're doing sexually is only creating this farce that you're immune to, STIs and HIV, which is definitely not the case. So being bluntly honest, I am very blunt with, I just had a conversation with my cousin about this. He was talking about how he hasn't gotten tested before and whatnot, and he's very sexually active around it. I'm like, what are we doing here? And I had to explain to him, in verbatim, broke it down in terms how harmful it was to him, and not only him, but the people that he was having sexual relations with, to not take care of that part of your health.
Mm-hmm.
So I think being, meeting people where they're at is very important. As simple as maybe you see your girlfriend at the bar, hey girl, I heard that you were having, sex, are you okay? Do you mean anything? And whatnot. And also utilizing time to be, comforting to people, because I feel like when we have conversations, people sometimes may, feel discomfort and ashamed and stuff like that, because that comes with the stigma of people being sexually active, you're a whore, you're a slut and whatnot. But companies said yeah, you may have had sex, but that doesn't make you any less than or equal to you're a human being.
And it's a natural thing.
Yes, it's a natural thing. Some people like it more than others. So yeah, but we have to be honest about that and be very, very, transparent about those things, and also have conversations that are addressing it and not tiptoeing and pussyfooting around the subject. So I feel like sometimes people just do not, want to have conversations because it's taboo or whatnot, but these are real things that happen, and people need to be understanding about what is helpful to prevent spread of STIs and HIV, and we need to be very vocal about those things and be bluntly honest about those things, even if they're discomfortable. There's discomfort that goes along with it, because at the end of the day, I would rather be have discomfort in a situation where I'm learning things about my health than to go out there, be willfully ignorant, and then have it later down the road, I'm extremely sick and I'm not able to bounce back from that. So I think meeting people where they're at, even if you're at at the grocery store, hey girl, see that, or quick, maybe I want to go grab a one so we can. And we
put
can
them on blast, but I understand
also,
what you're saying.
Also, if someone is uncomfortable, being there for them, saying hey, I know you may be uncomfortable, but let's go together. Let's go get tested together. I feel like people, can do that as well. I have honest conversations about these things and be there for each other, support each other in those things. If someone is nervous about getting on PrEP or DoxyPep, you can say, hey girl, let me take you to your appointment. If you need support, let's go. Let's sit down. I'm gonna be your support system. Yeah. Be there for each other. I think that's very important. And I feel like, being empathy is something that is missed a lot in these conversations. There's a lack of empathy and a lack of compassion. And I think that is something that is necessary when we're dealing with stuff like this, because we have to be, empathetic and compassionate to everybody's feelings and how they react and stuff like that. So having that and being there for people is also very important as well.
Rosko?
Damn, because Simon took most of what I was like literally as she talk, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get that point. Then she like, oh damn, that's not the point. But honestly, no.
So I would just shut up. Like,
I'm not mad at it, so I'm just gonna piggyback off of what you said. And I think one of the things is just like having that change of mindset. Like, when it comes to having that conversation, like, I don't know, for me, I tell my friends and like, even my mom, like, I'm going to get like tested and stuff, but that didn't happen like overnight. I think it just created like this, like, safe space in my head to know that this is okay to talk about. And I think so long as you have that confidence that it's okay to talk about, that people will feel confident in it too. Because when you have a conversation with people, you want to feel confident in what you're talking about. So I think that's the main thing you want to have. It's like feeling confident in what you want to like talk about. And like you said, being honest about it, because there's no point of just going, being around the bush and lying. Like, people are sexually active and, taking somebody that was young and think they were invincible for like, most of their youth, and then you get HIV from just not getting tested. So I think just like, from my experience of being young and not being tested, that's why I even like tell the youth who I cater to now at the attic, like, it's okay to ask me questions revolving around HIV. It's okay to go get tested. It's okay to talk about getting started on PrEP. That's literally my job, is to help get them linkage to PrEP and talking about PrEP, or even if like, they are positive, just like, their adherence to their medicine and their attention to care and just what that looks like. Creating that safe space and just making sure that you are confident in that conversation I think is a key point to like break that like stigma on like, Black and brown people not want to have that conversation. Because I think a lot of time it comes from just people not very sure of like how to go about the conversation. But if you're confident what you want to say, then it should be an easy flowing conversation to have.
Talk about it.
Just
over
talk about
collard greens and potatoes at Thanksgiving.
Oh, like, it's at the bar, don't really drink, like, girl, I had to just go get that syphilis shot. It's like, like creating that confidence, because I mean, like, at the end of the day, we are human beings, we are people, and we're not perfect beings. So, things happen, and I think creating that space to let your body know that, like, okay, I feel like this, I'm going to go do this so I don't feel like this, and I'm going to talk to somebody about what I'm going through, and because I feel confident in this, hopefully they will feel confident and have the conversation back and forth, because it should be equal in that conversation, not just one-sided. And I think that's the problem a lot of time. People always think it's going to be one-sided, that conversation. But if you really are confident what you are wanting to say to somebody about getting tested, or about when you did get tested and what your results were, I think that would be like the best foot you put forward, is being confident what you want to say.
Yeah, I think that we all have been through something, right? In some way, shape, or form. All of our lives, all of the paths that we have been on have garnered us to speak to our truth, and that brings us power. But even more so when we open up a lens of like, let me show you that the grass may not be greener on the other side, and that I also too might have been through some things, then we can break it down. And now we're having a different conversation, because now you can level with me. Now you don't, if you're a person who's looking up to me, right? Because I'm thinking about all the people who, oh my gosh, you're so amazing, I want to be like you. Or I'm like, oh, I want to be like you. And they're like, I'm just as normal as you, right? Like, don't put me on a pedestal. But I think it happens a lot when we think about people who we want to be around and we want to, emulate in some way, shape, or form, that we forget that they're human. Yeah. We forget that they're going through all the things, or they've been through them. And so my mom used to say something to me when I was younger. She'd say, I might not know everything, but I know a little bit more than you. And so I think that having that conversation and being able to bring it back to, so tell me about what you know, and the things that we used to sweep under the rug, as that's a cultural thing that we do. How do we take those things away and say like, hey, no, but actually we're going to sit and talk about it. Yes, it's going to be, a little bit of discomfort. Yes, somebody probably want to flip the table, but at least if you're going to flip the table, let's put everything on the table first, and then we could talk about flipping that later. Did you have something that you want to add?
Well, I do think that when we talk about HIV prevention, we stick to this narrative of a sexual topic, right? And so as we think about HIV, we think about how HIV is transmitted as a very bloodborne disease. And so there's still a lot of stigma around sex, right? And the conversations around sex. I have 1,001 tattoos, right? That increases my chances, 1,001 chances of acquiring HIV and other bloodborne diseases. And so when I think of when we get into the conversation of like how we can advance the education and access to folks who are not currently living with HIV, but engaged in preventative care, is not just to base it around sex, because a person will see their one sexual encounter as not relevant, or that their partner is not a part of this community that's heavily or deeply impacted by HIV, so their risk is lower, but yet they are a young person who's getting tattoos in someone's house, or they are sharing insulin needles, right? Or getting injections. Also, at the same time, that not everyone contracts HIV outside the body, right? And so some people are born with HIV, and so we just can't look at someone and say this person is living with HIV or not, because we have advanced in treatment. And so just being conscious about like the things that we are sharing and saying and educating to our community, especially our young folks who are more reluctant. Actually, that's a lie. Because these young folks, I would tell you, they some resilient. They will say anything on your mind. And it is to know your audience, to know the people that we're talking to. And so if we're not making a leadway in our community with the conversation around sex, we can just generalize the conversation of HIV preventative care and what that looks like how we get flu shots. When COVID was running rampant out here, we was all lined up to get a COVID shot. I mean, when the chicken sandwiches from KFC and Popeyes. These are, because there's I don't trust what's in the medication. I don't know, right? But we don't know the 39,000 ingredients that was in that chicken sandwich. Right? So bring relevance to the topic, right? It is like, if we take our chances with one thing, why we just don't take our chances with I'm just saying.
It's interesting that you say that, because there was when I first started talking to people about PrEP, one of the main questions that I always got was like, well, I only see, the commercials about people that don't look like me, or people who have a different sexual orientation than me, and all of that. And I said, let me ask you a question, because most of them, were in my age bracket. I was like, so you remember back in the day we used to get perms, right? We didn't know that you were going to see the commercial here in 2025 when we're talking about, so you might have some compensation coming your way if you use this specific box of perm, because now it's causing cancer and all of those things. And said, so today, right now, what we know is that this is what we can use to protect us. I cannot promise you that 25 years from now, that it's not going to be something else that comes up that they say like, oh, well, if you were on, Cabenuva or whatever the case may be during this time, you may be entitled to compensation. I cannot make that promise to you. But what I can tell you is that right now, today, this is what is here to support us. And so I think it's important to say like, hey, there are some unknowns that we don't know. But if we keep operating on unknowns, how are we going to ever get to where we need to be?
Yeah.
Right?
I agree with that, for sure.
All right. So with that being said, as we reflect on the theme of keep on loving, my question to you is, what does it mean to have awareness and showing up in a way that is loving, pleasurable, and also compassionate for people to use when they're dismantling stigma?
Well, love saves everything. I always say that. I know that sounds cheesy. I really do think that love saves everything. I think just like love goes a long way. When you really do love and generally love someone, you will definitely like find a way to have that like compassion and to actually like want to have that awareness for people. I think a lot of times people lack compassion, and that's why they don't always see like what's like right in front of them sometimes. And as I said before, as people, we're not perfect beings, but at the same time, we have our flaws that make us who we are. And sometimes people don't look past that and have that compassion to actually give into people who are living with HIV. And I think even what I said earlier, with the whole social media presence of how people treat HIV, it's like there's no compassion. Like nobody ever thinks when they're posting this thing like, oh, I'm going to hurt somebody when I make this. They always just think about themselves. And
With the fun, like the community interaction,
and I think it's just for likes or just for laughs, but it's nobody's laughing, and it's more so look stupid on yourself because like while you're sitting here being ignorant, there's probably somebody in your corner who probably wanted to come out to you about your status or probably wanted you to have that love and compassion for them, but now they don't know how to feel because you're out there being like that instead of actually trying to educate yourself. And I just think, when people are having awareness for like people with HIV, it goes a long way just outside of like stigma. It's like just by showing up, whether that's just like asking questions, coming to certain events, or just like being the person that sees someone else being ignorant on social media and standing up for them. You don't have to be a person living with HIV to spread awareness for HIV. And I think that's the like biggest misconception. A lot of times people think, oh, you have to live with the virus to actually spread awareness about the virus. No, you do not. Like, it's really like a big thing that I tell the youth that I serve today at the Attic. Like, you guys can do anything you want to do. You just got to put your mind and power to it. And I think the same goes for like, people who aren't living with HIV, but are affected by people who are, because you might have a loved one or you might have like a relative that has it or passed away from it. And you want to like do something to not only spread awareness for them, but for other people that might go through certain things. And I think to go back to what I said about love and compassion, those are the things I think that are missing that have people not wanting to be that way for people living with HIV.
All right, so Diamond, give me specifically for compassion.
Compassion. Okay. Okay. So for compassion, I'm an empathetic person. Like I care about people a lot, a lot. Sometimes to my own detriment because, I, put a lot of people in front of my own personal needs, but it's because I want to see people like thrive and be the best versions of themselves as possible. And I feel like nowadays, like there is a lack of compassion, especially when it comes to like, we have social media and everything like that. There is a level of like unawareness when it comes to how we, interact with people on social media because we don't know what people's tones are. We don't know how words can affect people. We're not interacting with them personally, so we're not seeing a lot of the things that may be affecting them in that space. So what I will say about compassion is like, you don't know what, like I said earlier, you don't know what a person's going through, and you want to be able to, relate to a person and build connections and be there for people, and also have a little bit of, a lot of empathy, I should say, a lot of empathy for people because you don't know what they're going through. And also it gives people opportunity to feel safe and build community and whatnot. And at the end of the day, we're going to need community right now with everything going on with this political climate.
Yes.
Community and community outreach and resources and organizations are going to be the most important thing that we are going to need to utilize right now. And if a person is not feeling like they don't have any compassion or are not receiving compassion from people, they're going to be ostracized and feel like they don't have a community. And then that's when we start to see that person go into the wrong direction when it comes to taking care of themselves and being healthy and whatnot. So we want to be mindful of what we are saying, mindful of how we are showing up for people. If someone is telling you like, hey, I need X, Y, and Z, listen to that person. It's like, if you don't have the capacity for it, say like, hey, I may not have the capacity for it, but like, I will care about, this is something that you care about. And because you care about it, I care about it. So let's work together on this in the future and like keep this going and stuff like that. Or I can find a resource or a person that can direct you to the, the things that you need. Right now, we need to be very, very intentional about how we show up for each other right now. And compassion is an intentional thing. So be intentional about how you care about people in these times, because right now intention is going to be the most important thing because intention goes along with impact. If you're intentionally not taking care of people and being compassionate about people, the impact is going to be detrimental to that person. So make sure that your intent is to be there for somebody or be caring for them, because the impact will be a much more positive thing. So that's something that I feel like we need to hone in on more and be more present for, is being more compassionate about people and showing empathy. Empathy goes a long way. So
Thank you.
All right, Naiymah, you got pleasure. So how can pleasure help dismantle stigma?
So I think having competent information around what pleasure is, right? Whether it's self-pleasure, pleasure with another person. Again, also pleasure is not all about sex. And so I think that we have this reality, again, and I said this earlier, is that when it comes to HIV, we go straight to the sexual aspect of people becoming HIV positive. However, there are these other things that, life is life, of course, all, right? And so an idle mind is the devil's playground, right? And so maybe pleasure for you could be reading a book. Maybe pleasure for you is taking a walk. Maybe pleasure for you is having a great meal, right? And so really trying to dive deep into like where your pleasure really exists, right? Exploring what that pleasure is, whether it's on a sexual level, whether it's on a non-sexual level, right? And try to, and when we talk about this word healthy, right? Figure out the best solution for what healthy is for you. Because I think healthy has been staged or stereotyped by this like overall, this stigma of what healthy is, right? And so, hell, if it's... marijuana is not legal in the state of Pennsylvania right now. However, it is for medicinal purposes. And so if it is smoking a joint that is coming from a dispensary, yes.
yeah,
I think that pleasure and harm reduction is two things that come into play, not just on the sexual, but on the non-sexual. Absolutely.
Yes, and I think also like I love the fact that you this question of pleasure, like it doesn't need to be sexual. Like I always ask people like, what brings you pleasure instead of what are you into, brings you pleasure, because it gives people an opportunity to share what they are like, what like brings them joy. And you can meet them in their world and also like share that experience. I feel like people oftentimes don't get a chance to really have those types of conversations.
Right.
It's very surface level, and I think again, when it comes to intentional things right now, we need to be very intentional how we treat each other.
Yes. Well, that wraps us up for today. But as I always like to say, no matter how you're loving,
Just keep on loving.
all right.